Welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
I'm husband.
And I'm wife.
Together, we're reading the Bible for the very first time.
We grew up without religion and wanted to know what all the fuss was about.
Well, what have we learned so far?
That God is a dick, and apparently some people believe in talking donkeys?
We're not trying to pass ourselves off as experts.
Nope, we're just reading the Bible for the first time and giving our first take reaction.
If you'd like to join us in this venture, you might consider starting at episode 1.
Otherwise, jump in wherever you like.
All right, let's go read the Bible.
Yeah, let's get to it. Husband!
Wife!
Guess what we're doing today?
Well, it is still barely Saturday, so that means that today we're doing our
Q&A Saturday.
And what are we Qing and Aing today?
We are going to go over chapter 8 of Ezekiel, where the women were mourning the god Tammuz. And then we are going over chapter 10 of Ezekiel, where there were 4 different faces on the cherubim thing that Ezekiel saw. But in the first chapter, he saw one set of faces. And in chapter 10, he saw the same set of faces, but with a difference. And what? And
right.
Yeah, so we're going to go over those.
So those are the only questions we had on 6 through 10 then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. Before we hop into this episode then, I do want to mention again that we are doing a drive for Patreon right now. We're trying to get up to a $400 per month level to help drive our podcast forward and help kind of get the word out about us. So we would definitely appreciate you heading over to our website at sacrilegiousdiscourse.com. Click on the link at the very top where we've got the Patreon drive going, and then go over and subscribe for as little as $2 per... No, actually, we have a $1 per month level now. Mm-hmm, so $1 a month gets you to help us move that goal forward for us and get us where we need to be. We also have advertising tiers on there, so check that out as well. That being said, let's go ahead and get into our episode.
Okie dokie. All right, so we are going to talk first about one of the visions that Ezekiel had.
Okay.
You remember how first he went into the building and he saw through the building that there were people. That
little peephole that God created or whatever.
Yeah, so that was where he was seeing them use Egyptian style worshiping.
Okay.
Okay, and then the next vision that he had was of Phoenician style worshiping, where the women were weeping for Tammuz.
Okay.
And then the last one was Persian style worshiping, where they were worshiping the sun.
Oh, so they're literally calling. I didn't realize that when we were reading the chapters, but they're literally calling out specific other gods that they were worshiping. And
yes.
Listing them off essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I had to glean that from the notes. I pulled that out from the research because it wasn't explicit what gods they were worshiping. It was just
It was in the practices that they were doing,
right.
And the way they were doing it.
Exactly.
Apparently.
They named the practices, but not what gods and cultures were associated with
Got it.
So that's why I just wanted to elucidate that a little bit.
Yeah.
And say, so these were the cultures that they were borrowing from.
Okay.
But, we know about their Egyptian stuff. We know about the worshiping the god. I mean, everybody knows about, worshiping Ra kind of thing.
Sure.
So we're not going to get into that too much. What I really want to talk about, though, because I had never heard of this before, was the middle one, the Phoenician worship, where the women were weeping for Tammuz.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that specifically is stated in verse 14 of chapter 8. Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord, and I saw women sitting there mourning the god Tammuz. Okay?
Yeah.
So why were they mourning? And who is Tammuz? And what the fuck is happening there, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so an ancient ritual of Sumerian origin, the weeping is to commemorate the death of seasonal fertility. So like the end of spring.
Okay.
And the cult stresses the mourning aspect of it. Okay. It's known to the Sumerians actually as Dumazid, the shepherd instead of Tammuz, but it's the same guy.
I think it's interesting, though, that Sumerian gods survived this long. Like, that's something that and we know that, much of the Bible is based on in Old Testament and was based on older gods and older stories. So I mean, it's not completely surprising, but to actually have a specific practice being mentioned in the Old Testament is kind of amazing.
Oh, it gets even better because he was known before that to the Canaanites as Adon. Okay.
Right.
And that's where you get into the Adonai.
Right.
Like Lord, God, holy, right? Yeah. So Tammuz was an ancient Mesopotamian deity associated with agriculture and shepherds, who was also the first and primary consort of the goddess Inanna. We've talked about her before.
Right.
She was later known as Ishtar.
Right. I remember we did a kind of a deep dive on that.
We did, because she was named as the Queen of Heaven. And we were like, whomst the fuck is the Queen of Heaven? And that's why we looked her up. We didn't look her up. We looked up who is the Queen of Heaven.
Sure.
So, and she was at one time God's wife, God's consort.
So that's also where like the Asherah poles and stuff like that comes from?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That is correct.
Because that's all the same, essentially, same realm of worship and whatnot.
It's the same goddess in various incarnations, depending on which region was worshiping her. But yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So in the story, Inanna is who we're talking about, perceives that Dumazid, which is the, what's his name? Tammuz, same guy. Okay.
Right.
So Inanna perceives that Dumuzid has failed to properly mourn her death. So when she returns from the underworld, she allows the Gala demons to drag him down to the underworld as her replacement.
Okay.
I don't know what Gala demons are, but they're under her control, and she makes them take him down. Okay.
Yeah. That could be a whole nother rabbit hole, possibly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had to really restrain myself here because when we start getting into these gods, the Mesopotamian and the Canaanite things and the Sumerian things, they develop into the Greek and then the Roman gods that we're familiar with today.
Okay.
So I had to really restrain myself.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Inanna later regrets this decision, and she decrees that Dumazid will spend half of the year in the underworld, but the other half of the year with her.
Oh, okay.
While his sister Geshtinanna stays in the underworld in his place those other 6 months.
I see.
Thus resulting in the cycle of the seasons.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Now, in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah, which also has a lot of biblical references.
Tammuz, again, the same dude as Dumuzid.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Tammuz was the lover of Ishtar's youth. And Ishtar, again, is Inanna.
Okay. Yeah.
Who was turned into an Alalu bird with a broken wing.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what happened to him in that story.
Got it.
So there's different stories of him with different names and different end results of his activities.
Okay.
So sometimes he's dragged to the underworld. Sometimes he's turned into a bird with a broken wing. Just depends, again, on what region it is and what's happening.
Sure.
Okay. So Dumazid was associated with fertility and vegetation, and the hot, dry summers of Mesopotamia were believed to be caused by Dumazid's yearly death.
Okay. Yeah.
So as he would go to the underworld, so would go all of the living plantation with him.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
During the month in midsummer bearing his name, which is July.
Okay.
FYI.
Yeah.
People all across Mesopotamia would engage in public ritual mourning for him.
Okay.
So they're sad because their plants are all dying, which means, not only is our agriculture coming to an end for the season, but now we about to freeze to death.
Sure.
And that fucking sucks.
Right.
Right? The cult of Dumazid later spread to the Levant and to Greece, where he became known under the West Semitic name Adonis.
Okay.
Okay.
I wondered. It kind of sounded like that
when I said Adon. Yeah. And I did mention this on Friday too, that that he is Adonis in a previous incarnation.
Right.
The cult of Ishtar and Tammuz may have been introduced to the kingdom of Judah during the reign of Manasseh, which I find very interesting because to have been brought in, that means that it wasn't dead yet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these stories kept being there and surrounding them, the Israelites, and some kings let the stories prevail while others tried to, stomp out the fires of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time, how these stories are like kind of like an undercurrent in the Bible. Like they, not specifically the stories, but the reference to these other gods and these other things that are happening with regard to other gods. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. In Greek mythology, Adonis was the mortal lover of the goddesses Aphrodite and Persephone, he was famous for having achieved immortality. He was widely considered to be the ideal of male beauty in classical antiquity. So when we see a lot of Greek statues, those are generally statues of Adonis.
Got it.
That perfect male figure is Adonis.
Sure.
And so that's what we mean today if we say, wow, he's a real Adonis.
Right.
Like, I don't think people our age and younger, like we're in our 40s, I don't think
don't
people
really use it
40 and younger would use
Right.
it. But I've
it was a
heard
term
it before.
that's been thrown around at, recent generations anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So younger people wouldn't know what the fuck we're talking about, but younger people probably aren't listening. And if they are, well, now you learned a thing. So, wow, what an Adonis.
Right.
Yeah. Beautiful man.
Maybe you can start making it a thing again,
Oh my God, I'm going to make fetch happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So the myth goes that Adonis was gored by a wild boar during a hunting trip.
Gotta watch out for those wild boars.
I mean, if you talk to John Knight, Cody Johnston.
Yeah.
Of some more news and even more news.
Right.
Yeah, he's like terrified of wild boars. Yeah, that's funny. So he died from this goring in Aphrodite's arms as she wept.
Yeah.
His blood mingled with her tears, and that became the anemone flower.
Oh, okay.
So that's the myth behind where the anemone comes from.
Got it. Okay.
Aphrodite declared the Adonia festival, so Adonis,
Right.
Adonai,
Yep.
Adonia festival,
Yep.
to commemorate his tragic death, which was celebrated by women every year in midsummer. During this festival, Greek women would plant so-called gardens of Adonis, small pots containing fast-growing plants, which they would set on top of their houses in the hot sun. The plants would sprout, but then would soon wither and die. Because if you leave a plant in the sun, that's what fucking happens, right? Yeah. Then the women would mourn, quote unquote,
That's
right?
kind of cool, actually.
The death of Adonis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, I do too. It's kind of a neat, just kind of appreciating the passing of the seasons,
right. Yeah.
I don't really see a problem with it per se.
You know what? I mean, I don't see a lot of problems in a lot of religious practices if they are not harmful. Like in a lot of the more pagan traditions were more based around culture seasons and growth
weather
and death and things like that.
Yeah.
It was very pertinent to being a human.
Right,
And
exactly. Survival in the wilds.
I don't mind those as much as what we've turned religion into in the modern age.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. Same. So the women would mourn the death of Adonis, tearing their clothes and beating their breasts in a public display of grief. So I'm sure
much like we hear about them doing for whatever reasons in the Bible all the time.
Yeah. So that just fit right in.
Yeah.
In late 19th and early 20th century scholarship of religion, so kind of recently, Adonis was widely seen as a prime example of the archetypical dying and rising god.
Okay.
So, a Jesus type figure.
Sure.
Because he did come back.
Right,
from
every
the
season
underworld.
or whatever. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
The name Adonis is related to Adonai, one of the titles used to refer to the God of the Hebrew Bible. and still used in Judaism to the present day. The Syrian name for Adonis is Gaius,
Okay.
which I just think is cool.
Yeah.
Other adaptations of Adon in various civilizations include the Canaanite god Baal, who was worshipped in Ugarit,
Really?
and of course Tammuz or Dumuzi, which that's how we started this piece here.
You said one of the names for this Adonis or whatever is a name. What was the name? Like it was a name for God, right? In the Bible.
Adonai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a name for God that they
what
still
I
use,
literally
right?
just said.
Yeah. No, I was going back. Sorry, I'm just recapping because apparently this same God is related to Baal, which is very interesting because
we know Baal.
it's almost their direct, rival, but these names are the same, which makes me think that a lot of this was just competing the same God competing against different factions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all the same sport. It's just different teams representing the same sport.
Right. Yeah.
So, he's also known as Tammuz or Dumuzi, meaning July, which I already said.
Yep.
To the Babylonians. And then in Egypt, he was Osiris, the god of resurrection. Yeah. So that's a whole different bag of worms.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, it sounds very relevant, like in a roundabout way, sounds very relevant to Christianity.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was like,
or at least heavily influenced the ideas behind Christianity.
Right, exactly. So. Or was happening at the same time so that all the names are confused as to who was what.
Well, much of this, with regard to Christianity, much of this happened prior to Christianity.
Right.
Which leads me to believe that it probably influenced it heavily.
Sure.
At least some of the resurrection ideas and the, things like that. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So then, so that was that cue that we had.
Yeah.
And I would consider that very aid.
Right.
So our next cue comes from chapter 10, verse 14. Each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One face was that of a cherub, not an ox.
Right.
The second, the face of a human being. Okay, that one tracks.
Yeah.
The third, the face of a lion. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And the fourth, the face of an eagle. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So, that was in chapter 1. He described the same thing, except he said ox instead of cherub. Yeah. So what the fuck, right?
Right.
So I did as much research as I could, and there is no consensus. Now, there are 3 suggestions that all result in...
Okay.
So here are the 3 possibilities, and you tell me which you think.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
All right.
So some explain the discrepancy by saying that these beings are cherubim, and each face is actually the face of a cherub, so there was simply some unknown reason why the substitute word was used. That's like the most apology.
That sounds so fucking generic.
It's not ours to know.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Stop questioning.
Yeah, that doesn't even come close to gleaning an answer for that.
Yeah, no, but I want to know.
Right.
You put this in front of me, I want to know.
Yeah, and you described it 2 different ways.
Yeah.
So
what does that mean?
Why? Why a human being described it 2 different ways?
Yeah.
So why?
Why?
And
then told me it was the same being.
Right.
The living creatures is what he called them.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, so are there 2 types? Because he's saying this is the same guys.
Sure.
So I'm like, which one is it?
Right.
Okay, so that's one explanation.
Okay.
And I do not accept that one.
Sure.
Okay. Some explain this by saying that the face of a cherub is something like the face of an ox.
Okay.
And they're like, yeah, he just didn't see it right the first time.
I don't know about that.
Because cherub is what the guy basically is. Right? He's a 4-faced angel guy. Right?
Right.
So I'm like, he's an angel guy and one of his faces
is an ox.
Is an angel? What?
Right.
That doesn't make any fucking sense. So I don't accept that answer either.
Yeah.
And then some explain this by the error of a scribe who copied the text.
And that's probably the most likely.
With that one.
Yeah. But don't tell me it's not that one, because look, it's either that or, we have to throw this whole thing out the window.
Yeah.
Because it's hypothetically Ezekiel writing this whole book, right?
We're pretending.
We're pretending like that's the case.
Yes, in canon,
sure.
He wrote the whole fucking thing.
In canon, he wrote the whole fucking thing. The same motherfucker described the same entity almost to a T exactly the same way, except for one small fact.
Yeah, he changed the cherub he changed the ox to a cherub.
And it turns out that one small fact was a pretty big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Because that's ox and cherub are what? No.
Now I will say that the word cherub comes from the same root as the word caribou.
Oh.
Which I found interesting.
Okay.
But I didn't see anybody else make that connection that isn't ox and caribou from the same family.
I could have accepted something along those lines.
But I didn't see that offered up.
Right.
I made that connection.
Sure.
Like, and I've mentioned it more than once and stumbled across it more than once that it came from that same root word.
Right. I'm going to lean more that this is a copy and error.
Yeah.
Because that tracks better in my mind. So,
and it might even have involved that similarity in term.
Sure.
You know?
Possibly, yeah, because the words might have even been close like how they look
in the original Hebrew or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
So yeah, but regardless of how the error came about, it was an error nonetheless.
Okay.
I'm gonna call that one aid, but with a question mark and an asterisk and a fuck you.
So once again, the Bible is not infallible.
Correct.
This is not the word of God.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
And also, because we even are sitting here with these questions about this ridiculous book, God is a dick.
There you go. Yeah. I mean,
accepting that there is one, which
there's not.
There's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, was that all we had to cover today?
That is all we had to cover today.
Okay. Well,
consider yourself 8 off.
That was our Q&A for chapters, Ezekiel chapters 6 through 10. And, this is Saturday, which means that tomorrow is Sunday. So we'll be back tomorrow with our
Sacrilegious Book Club.
Right. And then I will get our weekly wrap up out. And then we'll be back on Monday if you want. There's 2 things that could happen that day. You could listen to our episode, which will be...
Well, on Sunday Sunday night we'll be recording Ezekiel chapter 11.
Which will come out on Monday.
Which will come out Monday morning.
And then that evening...
we will be recording Ezekiel chapter 12 in a live...
On Twitch and on YouTube. And that is done at 10:30 on Mondays. So the links are in the show notes here. Go down there and click on the link for our YouTube or Twitch page. And subscribe and join us on that live. We'd love to see you there.
Yes, we would.
All right. I think that's all we got now, so we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Hey, wife, I guess that's the end?
But husband, that's just sad.
It doesn't have to be. We are on lots of social media platforms like Twitter. Our handle there is sacrilegious_D.
For D's nuts.
Oh my God. Stop doing that. Anyway, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. There's a link to all of our social media sites at our website.
Ooh, we have a website?
Yeah, it's sacrilegiousdiscourse.com, where you can also find a link to our merch shop.
We have a merch shop?
Yep, we have podcast-themed clothing, mugs, notebooks, and more, as well as an atheist and science-themed products.
Wow, our fans should really go check that out right now.
Definitely. They can get in touch with us by sending an email to sacrilegiousdiscourse@gmail.com. But before they do that, we could really use some help.
Oh yeah? With what?
Well, it's not free running the podcast, and we need some financial support in order to get better equipment, which will free up time so we can concentrate on our podcast and our fans.
Okay, so what should they do?
Head over to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse and sign up as a contributor on our podcast. Supporters there receive additional bi-weekly episodes that we record just for our Patreon members for as little as $2 a month.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using.
And Apple Podcast reviews help us out tremendously.
Like and subscribe. Leave an Apple review. Join us on Twitter. Support us on Patreon. That's a lot of instructions. Don't forget to say thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.